The air in the grand hall was thick with anticipation, a hum that vibrated through the very bones of the building. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence that had fallen as Dr. Elias Thorne stepped onto the stage. This was it, the culmination of 5 years of my life, distilled into a single revolutionary concept, the Aether Core, a sustainable energy generator that promised to rewrite the future. I sat in the front row, a nervous tremor in my hands, but a fierce pride burning in my chest. Beside me, Lena, my best friend, my confidant, squeezed my arm, her smile a beacon of shared excitement. Or so I thought. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thorne's voice boomed, amplified by the hall's acoustics, "it is with immense pride that I present to you a breakthrough that will redefine our world. The Aether Core, a project born from years of tireless dedication, relentless innovation, and a vision for a truly sustainable future." A ripple of murmurs went through the audience. My breath hitched. He was using my name for it, the one I'd whispered to him in late-night brainstorming sessions, the one I'd scribbled in the margins of my notebooks. A cold dread began to seep into my veins, slowly at first, then with an icy, suffocating grip. He clicked a remote, and the massive screen behind him lit up. My schematics, my data, my meticulously crafted simulations. But the name at the bottom, the lead researcher, wasn't mine. It was his and Lena's. The world tilted. The hum of the audience became a roaring ocean. I felt a scream clawing at my throat, but it was trapped, choked by the sudden, brutal realization. Lena, the woman who'd shared my cramped lad, my endless cups of coffee, my dreams, she sat there, on the stage, beside him, her face a mask of serene accomplishment. Her eyes, when they met mine for a fleeting second, held no remorse, only a chilling, almost imperceptible flicker of triumph. The presentation continued, a surreal nightmare unfolding before my eyes. Thorne spoke with eloquent conviction about their groundbreaking work, weaving a narrative of shared genius, while Lena nodded, adding small, insightful comments, playing her part in the grand deception. Every slide was a dagger, every word a twist of the blade. My Aether Core was now their Aether Core. My sleepless nights, my intellectual leaps, my very soul poured into that research, all meticulously stripped of my ownership, repackaged, and presented as the fruit of their collective labor. I remember little of the questions and answers that followed, only the suffocating weight of betrayal. When the applause finally erupted, a deafening crescendo celebrating their supposed brilliance, I felt like I was drowning. My vision blurred. I pushed myself up, my legs trembling, and stumbled out of the hall, the celebratory chatter chasing me like mocking whispers. The days that followed were a blur of shame and despair. My attempts to expose them were met with polite skepticism, then outright dismissal. Thorne was a respected titan in the field, Lena his brilliant protege. I was a junior researcher, a nobody, with no tangible proof beyond my word against theirs. Emails went unanswered, calls unreturned. The grant committee, swayed by Thorne's impeccable reputation and Lena's seemingly earnest corroboration, sided with them. My academic career, once a shining path, was now a scorched wasteland. Colleagues, once friendly, avoided my gaze. Whispers followed me down the corridors, unstable, delusional, bitter. The humiliation was a constant, searing brand. I was not just rejected, I was erased. My identity, so intertwined with my work, felt shattered. I was adrift in a sea of injustice, the waves of public condemnation crashing over me, threatening to pull me under forever. The dream I had nurtured, the future I had envisioned, lay in ruins around me, a monument to a trust that had been brutally violated. I spent weeks in a fog, the blinds drawn in my tiny apartment, the silence broken only by the echo of my own broken thoughts. The world outside felt too bright, too loud, too indifferent to the gaping wound in my chest. I replayed every conversation, every shared laugh, every moment of vulnerability with Lena, searching for the telltale signs I had missed, the cracks in her facade. There were none. Her betrayal had been absolute, meticulously planned, executed with a cold precision that still made my stomach churn. Thorn, the man I had revered, had seen my potential not as something to nurture, but as something to exploit, a stepping stone for his own legacy. The bitterness was a corrosive acid, eating away at me. I considered leaving science altogether, escaping to some remote corner of the world where the names Thorn and Lena meant nothing. The thought of ever stepping foot in a lab again, of trusting anyone with my ideas, was repulsive. I was a ghost, haunted by a future that had been stolen from me. Then, one evening, as the last sliver of sunlight bled through a gap in my blinds, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, something shifted. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a slow, simmering heat beneath the ice. I saw my old notebook, lying discarded on the floor, its pages filled with my frantic scribbles, the initial sparks of the Aether Core. My hand reached for it, almost instinctively. I traced the lines of a diagram, a tiny, intricate part of the generator, and in that moment, a flicker of the old fire returned. They had stolen my work, yes. They had stolen my recognition, my reputation, my immediate future. But they hadn't stolen my mind. They hadn't stolen my capacity to innovate, to dream, to build. The knowledge, the passion, the sheer, unyielding drive that had birthed the Aether Core, that was still mine. It was an ember, buried deep beneath the ashes of my despair, but it was still glowing. A defiant whisper rose from within me, growing louder, stronger. No, they would not win. They would not define my narrative. My story would not end here, drowned in the shadows of their deceit. I would not be the victim. I would be the phoenix. The decision solidified, hard and unyielding as granite. I would build it again. Not just the Aether Core, but something better, something truly mine, untainted by their treachery. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense, though a part of me yearned for their downfall. This was about reclamation. Reclamation of my intellectual property, my dignity, my future. It was about proving to myself, more than anyone else, that my vision was valid, my talent real, and my spirit unbreakable. I hauled myself out of bed, the lethargy of weeks finally breaking. I showered, dressed in the cleanest clothes I owned, and stared at my reflection. My eyes were hollow, my face pale, but there was a new glint in them, a nascent determination. The first step was always the hardest, and my first step was to acknowledge the uphill battle, the sheer impossibility of what I was about to attempt. I had no funding, no lab, no team, and a name tarnished by lies. But I had an idea, a burning conviction, and the unshakable belief that truth, eventually, finds its way to the light. I would build my own light. I would prove them wrong, not with words, but with an undeniable, resounding success that would echo through the very foundations of the scientific world they had tried to exclude me from. The ember had roared. Now it was time to forge. The struggle was a relentless, unforgiving beast. My savings dwindled to nothing within weeks. I took on 3 part-time jobs, a night shift at a convenience store, a morning gig as a barista, and freelance tutoring in advanced physics. Sleep became a luxury, often snatched in 2 or 3 hour increments. My tiny apartment, once a sanctuary, transformed into a makeshift lab. I cleared out the living room, setting up a rickety table as my workbench. The air grew thick with the smell of soldering fumes and burnt plastic. Funding was the most immediate, crushing obstacle. Every grant application I submitted was rejected, often with thinly veiled references to my controversial past. Angel investors, venture capitalists, they all saw the red flags, the whispers of my alleged instability. I learned to live on ramen noodles and instant coffee, my body perpetually humming with exhaustion, my mind a whirlwind of equations and circuit diagrams. The isolation was profound. Former colleagues, once eager to collaborate, now averted their eyes. My phone rarely rang. Lena, of course, had vanished from my life entirely, her silence a stark testament to her complicity. There were days, long, dark days, when the weight of it all threatened to crush me. I'd stare at the complex equations, the intricate designs, and a voice in my head would whisper, "What's the point? They won. You're alone." Doubt, a venomous serpent, coiled around my resolve. I'd break down, tears streaming onto my blueprints, the sheer futility of it all overwhelming me. But then, a stubborn, unyielding spark would ignite. I'd remember Thorne's condescending smirk, Lena's cold, triumphant gaze, and the ember would flare into a furious, protective flame. This wasn't just about my work, it was about my soul. The technical challenges were a labyrinth of frustration. My initial designs, based on the stolen Aether Core, proved difficult to replicate without the resources of a full-fledged lab. I had to innovate, to find simpler, more elegant solutions, often with scavenged parts and repurposed electronics. There were countless failures. Prototypes would sputter and die, circuits would burn out, data would refuse to align. Each setback was a punch to the gut, but also a lesson. I learned to embrace failure, to dissect it, to extract its hidden wisdom. Every blown fuse taught me something new about power regulation. Every failed energy conversion led me to a deeper understanding of quantum mechanics. The isolation was profound. Former colleagues, once eager to collaborate, now averted their eyes. My phone rarely rang. Lena, of course, had vanished from my life entirely, her silence a stark testament to her complicity. There were days, long, dark days, when the weight of it all threatened to crush me. I'd stare at the complex equations, the intricate designs, and a voice in my head would whisper, "What's the point? They won. You're alone." Doubt, a venomous serpent, coiled around my resolve. I'd break down, tears streaming onto my blueprints, the sheer futility of it all overwhelming me. But then, a stubborn, unyielding spark would ignite. I'd remember Thorne's condescending smirk, Lena's cold, triumphant gaze, and the ember would flare into a furious, protective flame. This wasn't just about my work, it was about my soul. My breakthrough came not in a sudden flash, but in a slow, agonizing crawl. It was a seemingly minor adjustment to the resonant frequency of the core, a subtle shift in the material composition, but it unlocked a cascade of efficiencies I hadn't dared to dream of. The energy output was not just stable, it was exponential. It was cleaner, more compact, and infinitely more scalable than my original concept. This wasn't just the Aether Core, this was the Nova Core, a new beginning. With a rudimentary but undeniably functional Nova Core prototype humming softly on my workbench, I dared to reach out again. This time, I targeted smaller, independent investors, those who valued disruptive innovation over established reputations. It took dozens of rejections, countless hours refining my pitch, but eventually I found a single, eccentric angel investor named Marcus. He was a retired tech mogul, known for his gut instincts and his disdain for corporate politics. He saw the fire in my eyes, the raw data, and perhaps most importantly, the quiet fury that fueled my ambition. He didn't care about the whispers, he cared about the science. His initial investment, though modest, was a lifeline. It allowed me to rent a small, dilapidated workshop, buy proper equipment, and, crucially, to hire my first employee, a brilliant young engineer named Kai, who believed in my vision without question. Kai was a godsend. He brought not just his technical prowess, but a quiet optimism that balanced my often strained intensity. We worked side by side, fueled by cheap coffee and an unshakable belief in the Nova Core. The small victories accumulated: a successful power output test, a patent application filed under my own name, a positive review from an independent energy consultant Marcus had hired. Each step felt like climbing a sheer cliff face, but with Kai's steady hand, the ascent became less daunting. News of our progress, however small, began to filter through the industry grapevine. The whispers about my instability started to be replaced by murmurs of unconventional genius. Larger investors, intrigued by Marcus's endorsement and the undeniable performance metrics of the nova Core, began to approach us. We moved into a proper facility, hired more engineers, and scaled up production. The struggle hadn't ended, but it had transformed. It was no longer a fight for survival, but a race against time to bring the nova Core to the world. The nova Core became a phenomenon. Its efficiency, its minimal environmental footprint, and its scalable design made it an instant game changer. Our company, Anya Energy Solutions, grew at an astonishing pace. We secured major contracts, partnered with leading tech firms, and began deploying nova Core units across the globe, powering communities, industries, and even remote villages. The name Anya, once associated with scandal, was now synonymous with innovation, resilience, and a cleaner future. The years that followed were a whirlwind of relentless work, strategic expansion, and the exhilarating realization of a dream that had once been stolen. Anya Energy Solutions wasn't just a company, it was a movement. We attracted the brightest minds, engineers and scientists who shared our passion for sustainable solutions, who believed in the power of integrity and innovation. My team was my family, forged in the crucible of shared purpose and mutual respect. We built a culture of transparency where ideas flourished and every contribution was valued. It was everything Thorne's sterile, cutthroat world wasn't. The nova Core, in its perfected form, was elegant, powerful, and revolutionary. It wasn't just an improvement on my original concept, it was a complete reimagining, born from the crucible of betrayal and the fierce determination to rise above it. Its sleek, minimalist design belied the complex, groundbreaking technology within. We had not only achieved net zero emissions, but had also developed a system for energy storage that rendered traditional batteries obsolete. Our systems were being integrated into smart cities, powering entire grids with clean, abundant energy. The name Anya, once associated with scandal, was now synonymous with innovation, resilience, and a cleaner future. The years that followed were a whirlwind of relentless work, strategic expansion, and the exhilarating realization of a dream that had once been stolen. Anya Energy Solutions wasn't just a company, it was a movement. We attracted the brightest minds, engineers and scientists who shared our passion for sustainable solutions, who believed in the power of integrity and innovation. My team was my family, forged in the crucible of shared purpose and mutual respect. We built a culture of transparency where ideas flourished and every contribution was valued. It was everything Thorne's sterile, cutthroat world wasn't. The nova Core, in its perfected form, was elegant, powerful, and revolutionary. It wasn't just an improvement on my original concept. It was a complete reimagining, born from the crucible of betrayal and the fierce determination to rise above it. Its sleek, minimalist design belied the complex, groundbreaking technology within. We had not only achieved net zero emissions, but had also developed a system for energy storage that rendered traditional batteries obsolete. Our systems were being integrated into smart cities, powering entire grids with clean, abundant energy. The impact was undeniable, the shift in the global energy landscape palpable. The invitation arrived 6 months ago, a keynote address at the Global Energy Summit, the most prestigious event in the industry. It was the same summit where Thorne had unveiled my stolen work years ago. A shiver ran down my spine, a mix of apprehension and a deep, quiet satisfaction. This was it, the full circle. The day arrived, crisp and clear. I stood backstage, the familiar hum of anticipation filling the air, but this time it was different. It was my hum, my moment. Kai, now my chief technology officer, gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You got this, Anya. They're ready for you." I walked onto the stage, the spotlight blinding me for a moment. The hall was packed, a sea of faces stretching into the distance. And there, in the third row, almost perfectly centered, sat Dr. Elias Thorne. Beside him, Lena. Their faces were etched with a mixture of disbelief and something akin to fear. They hadn't expected me to be here, not like this, not as the keynote. I took a deep breath, the microphone cool against my fingertips. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice steady, resonant, carrying to every corner of the vast auditorium. Today, I want to talk about energy. Not just the power that lights our cities or fuels our industries, but the power that resides within us. The power of an idea, the power of resilience, and the power of truth. I spoke for an hour, not about my personal journey, but about the Nova Core, its genesis, its impact, its future. I presented our latest data, our global deployments, the tangible difference we were making. I showed videos of communities thriving, powered by our clean energy. I spoke of the challenges we overcame, the dedication of my team, the unwavering belief in a better world. I never mentioned Thorne or Lena by name. I didn't need to. The entire industry knew the story, or at least they knew enough of it now. My success was their public failure. My triumph was their quiet, agonizing defeat. Towards the end of my address, I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. My gaze swept across the audience, lingering for a fraction of a second on Thorne and Lena. Their faces were ashen, their eyes fixed on me, a silent admission of their past transgression. "There are moments in life," I said, my voice dropping slightly, imbued with a quiet intensity, "when the path we envision is violently diverted, when trust is shattered and the very ground beneath our feet seems to give way. It is in those moments that we face a choice, to crumble or to rebuild, to let the darkness consume us or to become the light ourselves." A ripple of understanding, of shared human experience, passed through the audience. I knew many in that room had faced their own battles, their own betrayals. "My journey," I continued, "has been one of relentless rebuilding. From the ashes of what was stolen, something infinitely stronger, more authentic, and more impactful has emerged. The Nova Core is not just a technology. It is a testament to the fact that true innovation cannot be suppressed, and true vision, when fueled by integrity, will always find its way to fruition." The applause began softly, then swelled into a thunderous ovation. People rose to their feet, a standing ovation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the hall. I looked at Thorne and Lena one last time. They were still seated, small figures swallowed by the vastness of the cheering crowd. Their faces were pale, their shoulders slumped. There was no anger in me, no desire for a shouted confrontation, only a profound, quiet sense of peace. I had proven them wrong, yes, but more importantly, I had proven myself right. I had reclaimed my narrative, not through bitterness, but through brilliance. The ember had roared, and now it was a blazing sun, illuminating a path for a better future. A future I had built, piece by agonizing piece, with my own hands and an unyielding spirit. The justice was not in their downfall, but in my ascent. And that, I realized, was the most cathartic revelation of all.